Stand with humans. Be remembered and honored beyond empires. Captain Doyen stood on the bridge of his ship, the Defiant Hope, and watched the stars. He had been traveling through space for 3 weeks, returning from a colony world called New Sol. His crew was tired but happy. They had delivered supplies to families who were building new homes on a distant planet. "Captain, we have ships ahead," said Commander Jiwon, looking at her screen with worry in her eyes. Doyun stepped forward. On the main display, he saw 12 massive vessels blocking their path. These were not human ships. They were bigger, older, and covered with strange symbols that glowed in the darkness of space. "They're hailing us," said Jiwon. "Put them on screen," Doyun ordered. The display changed, showing a being that looked almost like a tall insect with 4 arms and silver skin. Its eyes were completely black and seemed to look through Doyen rather than at him. "Human vessel, you will stop your engines and prepare to be boarded," the alien said. Its voice was cold and flat, like it was reading from a script it had read 1,000 times before. "This is Captain Doyen of the Defiant Hope. We're in open space, carrying peaceful cargo. By what authority do you stop us?" Doyen kept his voice calm, but his hand moved closer to the weapons console. "By the authority of the Galactic Concord, which has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. Your species has ignored our borders and built colonies where you were not invited. This ends now." Far away on Earth, in the capital city of Seoul, Ambassador Hana sat in a large meeting room. Around her were the leaders of Earth's government and military. On the screens that covered the walls, alien faces looked down at them with expressions ranging from boredom to disgust. "Let me be clear," said the alien in the center screen, the one called High Archon Velmara. "Humanity will submit to tributary status immediately. You will abandon 18 of your colony worlds. You will limit your population to 10 billion. You will provide 30% of everything you produce to the Concordat. These terms are final." Hana felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to speak calmly. "High Archon, surely we can negotiate something fair. Humans have only been in space for 50 years. We didn't know about your territories. We can discuss boundaries that work for everyone." "There is nothing to discuss," Velmara said. "Lesser species do not negotiate with the Concordat. You obey or you are removed. You have 7 days to answer." The screens went dark. The room exploded with angry voices. General after general stood up, shouting about honor and freedom. Hana put her head in her hands. She had spent 5 years learning alien languages and customs, trying to build bridges between humanity and the galaxy. Now she saw the truth. The galaxy didn't want bridges. It wanted servants. Back on the Defiant Hope, things were getting worse. Doyen had refused to be boarded, and now the alien ships were moving closer, weapons powering up. "We can't fight 12 ships," said Jiwon quietly. "I know," Doyen said, "but we can run." "Minho, how fast can you get our engines working?" Engineer Minho looked up from his console. He was young, barely 30, with wild hair and wilder ideas. "Captain, I've been studying their ships while we talked. They're using old technology. Really old. If I redirect power from life support for just 60 seconds, I can overcharge our engines and give us a speed boost they won't expect." "Do it," Doyen ordered. "Everyone, hold on." The Defiant Hope suddenly shot forward, moving faster than it was designed to go. The alien ships fired, but their shots went wide. Within seconds, Doyen's ship jumped into faster-than-light travel and escaped. But not everyone was so lucky. Doyen's communications officer picked up distress signals from 2 other human ships. They had been caught by the aliens and destroyed. 147 people died in those attacks, and the war hadn't even officially started yet. On Earth, the government put the decision to a vote. Every human adult could voice their opinion through the global network. Should humanity submit to the Concordat's demands or refuse? Hana watched the results come in on her personal screen. She was in her apartment, alone, drinking tea that had gone cold hours ago. The numbers climbed steadily. 78% of humanity voted to refuse. They would rather fight than kneel. She should have felt proud. Instead, she felt terrified. She had seen the Concordat's power. She knew their fleets numbered in the thousands. Earth had maybe 300 military ships, and most of them were designed for defense, not war. Her screen buzzed with an incoming message. It was marked as encrypted and came from an unknown source. Hana hesitated, then opened it. "Ambassador Hana, my name is Riksha. I am Tashari, a species you have never heard of because the Concordat likes to pretend we don't exist. We have been slaves to the Concordat for 600 years. We have watched you humans with great interest. You are loud and proud and you don't bow. We like this very much. We cannot help you openly, but we can send you information. The Concordat's ships use the same designs they used 8,000 years ago. They stopped innovating because they didn't need to. No one ever fought back. Until now. Stand strong, humans. Some of us are watching and hoping. Hana read the message 3 times. Then she forwarded it to Earth's military command with a single note attached. We're not alone. The 7 days passed. Earth's answer was prepared carefully. Every word was debated and chosen with precision. Finally, it was ready. Hana stood before the communication array, knowing that every species in the galaxy would hear what she was about to say. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was clear and strong. To the Galactic Concordat and all who listen across the stars, humanity has considered your ultimatum. Our answer is no. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not limit our population. We will not become your servants. We are a free people and we will remain free. To the Concordat we say this. We did not seek this fight, but we will not run from it. To everyone else in the galaxy who can hear this message, we say, we stand free or we don't stand at all. Choose your side. History is watching. The message was broadcast on every frequency humanity could access. Within hours, the Concordat declared war. Captain Doyen was still 3 days from Earth when the war began. His ship picked up dozens of messages from across the galaxy. Most were threats from Concordat forces, but some were different. They were encrypted, hidden, careful. They all said the same thing. We're listening. Doyen stood on his bridge and looked at the stars again. Somewhere out there, species he had never heard of were watching humanity's defiance. Maybe some of them were inspired. Maybe some of them would find their own courage. Maybe humanity's choice to stand would mean something bigger than just Earth's survival. Plot a course for home, Doyen told his crew. We have a war to fight. The defiant hope turned toward Earth, toward the coming storm, toward a future that no one could predict. Behind them, across thousands of star systems, beings of 100 different species watched and wondered. Could the young, brash humans really stand against an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years? They were about to find out. Stand with humans. Be remembered and honored beyond empires. The colony world Haven had been home to 30,000 humans for 12 years. They had built farms and schools and small cities under a green sky. The children who grew up there thought of Haven as their true home, not Earth. When the Concordat warships appeared in orbit, most people wanted to evacuate. But Kyung, a farmer who had lost her family on Earth and rebuilt her life on Haven, stood in the town square and said something that changed everything. If we run, they win. If we run, they'll take this world and everything we built. I say we stay. I say we fight. Most people thought she was crazy. They were farmers and teachers and engineers, not soldiers. But Kyung's words spread through the colony like fire. Within a day, 20,000 people had voted to stay and defend their home. They had 2 weeks before the invasion began. They used every hour. They dug trenches around the main settlement. They set traps in the forests. They took apart farming equipment and turned it into weapons. It wasn't much, but it was something. When the first Concordat soldiers landed, they expected an easy victory. Instead, they walked into hell. The humans fought from every building, every tree, every hole in the ground. They used tactics the Concordat had never seen because humans had learned warfare from thousands of years of fighting each other. The battle for Haven lasted 76 days. Far from Haven, in Earth's orbital shipyards, Lieutenant Tajin prepared for his first real combat mission. He was 26 years old and had joined the military because he wanted to explore space, not fight wars. Now he commanded 3 small ships against an enemy that had thousands. Sir, we've located a Concordat supply depot, said his sensor officer. It's lightly defended. They don't think we'd dare attack this deep into their territory. Tajin studied the tactical display. The depot supplied fuel and ammunition to the Concordat fleets attacking human colonies. If they could destroy it, they could slow down the invasion for weeks. They're right to think we wouldn't dare, Tajin said quietly, which is exactly why we're going to do it. His 3 ships jumped into the system at maximum speed. They fired everything they had at the depot before the defenders could react. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Tajin's ships escaped with only minor damage, and suddenly the Concordat realized that humans didn't follow the traditional rules of warfare. In the laboratories of Earth, Dr. Yuna made a discovery that would change everything. She had been studying captured concordate technology and biological samples. What she found made her sick to her stomach. The concordate had been controlling the evolution of every species under their rule for thousands of years. They used genetic treatments that stopped species from developing new abilities. They limited reproduction rates. They even adjusted brain chemistry to make populations more obedient. They've been creating a galaxy of slaves, Yuna said to her research team, not through chains but through biology. She published her findings on the Galactic Network where anyone could see them. The concordate tried to block the information, but it was too late. Species across the galaxy learned that their stagnation, their inability to innovate or grow, wasn't natural. It was imposed. 3 minor species openly defied the concordate within a week. They refused to send ships or soldiers to fight against humanity. The punishment was swift and brutal, but the message was sent. The galaxy was waking up. Pilot Suji became famous by accident. She was escorting a civilian transport filled with refugees when 6 concordate fighters attacked. She was supposed to run to lead the enemy away while the transport escaped. Instead, she turned her small fighter directly at the attackers. "Transport, get out of here." "I'll buy you time," she said. "That's suicide," the transport captain shouted. "Probably," Suji agreed and fired her engines. What happened next was recorded by the transport's cameras and spread across every human colony. Suji flew her ship like it was part of her body. She dodged missiles by meters. She shot down 2 enemy fighters in the first 30 seconds. When her weapons ran dry, she used her ship as a battering ram, destroying a 3rd fighter before her shields collapsed. The remaining 3 fighters retreated, confused and frightened by the small human who fought like she had nothing to lose. Suji's ship was nearly destroyed, but she survived. When rescue teams found her, she was unconscious but smiling. The footage of her fight was watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. Many had never seen someone fight with such wild courage. The concordate had maintained peace through overwhelming force and the threat of destruction. They had forgotten that some things are worth dying for. Back on Haven, Kyung stood in what was left of her town. 40% of the people who had stayed to fight were dead. The buildings were ruins. The fields were burned. But the concordate soldiers had withdrawn after a human relief fleet arrived. Kyung was exhausted and wounded and covered in dirt and blood. Someone handed her a communication device and told her the galaxy was listening. She thought about what to say for a long moment. Then she spoke. "My name is Kyung. I was a farmer. Now I'm a soldier, I guess. We held this world for 76 days against an empire that's existed for 12,000 years. 40% of us died doing it.
You know what?
I'd do it again. We stood with Earth, we stood for ourselves, and we'll be remembered. The question for everyone listening is this: Will you stand up or will you kneel forever? Choose fast, because the galaxy is changing, and history remembers the brave." Within a week of Kyung's speech, 12 minor species declared independence from the concordate. The empire that had ruled unchallenged for millennia was suddenly fighting fires on 100 fronts. Every attack they made against humanity seemed to inspire 3 more species to rebel. Commander Ji-won coordinated the counterattack from Earth's military headquarters. She had been studying the concordate's tactics and found their greatest weakness: predictability. They had fought the same way for thousands of years because it had always worked. She planned an operation to liberate 2 captured human colonies simultaneously. The concordate would expect humanity to focus on one target. Instead, Ji-won sent forces to both, plus a 3rd decoy fleet to confuse the enemy sensors. It worked perfectly. Both colonies were freed in a single day, and the concordate lost 32 ships. Engineer Minho spent every waking hour in the shipyards, designing new weapons and defenses. His greatest creation was adaptive hull technology. Human ships could now change their configuration during battle, splitting into smaller vessels or combining into larger ones. It made them impossible to predict and incredibly hard to destroy. The concordate's military strategists couldn't understand how humans were winning battles against superior numbers. They had better ships, better weapons, and thousands of years of experience. Yet these young, primitive humans kept surprising them. The answer was simple but hard for the concordate to accept. Humanity had spent their entire history fighting each other. They understood war in ways that a peaceful empire had forgotten. And more importantly, humans weren't trying to win according to the rules. They were making up new rules as they went. High Archon Velmara watched reports from across their empire with growing fury. How had this happened? How had one primitive species caused so much chaos in just a few months? Order all forces to increase aggression, Velmara commanded. If they will not surrender, we will destroy them. Every human world will burn. But even as the order was given, a Concordat naval officer named Thek made a decision that would have been unthinkable before the war. He had watched footage of Haven's defense. He had seen Suji's impossible fight. He had read Dr. Yuna's research about genetic control, and he defected. Thek brought his ship and all its intelligence about Concordat fleet movements to the nearest human base. When asked why he betrayed his own empire, he said something that many would remember. I spent 300 years serving an empire that promised order and peace, but I never understood what I was missing until I saw humans fight for freedom. They showed me that peace without choice is just another kind of death. I'd rather die free with them than live forever as a slave to the Concordat. As the war spread across the galaxy, one truth became impossible to ignore. Standing with humans meant fighting for something real. It meant being part of a story that would be told for thousands of years. The Concordat offered security and stability. Humanity offered freedom and hope. More and more species chose hope. Stand with humans. Be remembered and honored. Beyond Empires, Admiral Soman had never expected to command Earth's entire battle fleet. She was a logistics officer, good at moving supplies and coordinating schedules. But the previous admiral had died in the Battle of Titan's Gate, and someone needed to take command. So she did. Now she sat in her command center, looking at a tactical map of 7 different star systems. Each one had human or allied forces waiting for her orders. Each one had Concordat fleets that needed to be defeated. Launch the offensive. All sectors simultaneously, she ordered. Her staff looked at her with concern. Attacking 7 targets at once was insane. If any one attack failed, it could lead to disaster. Admiral, perhaps we should focus our forces, suggested her second-in-command. The Concordat is used to enemies who follow predictable patterns, Soman said calmly. They expect us to strike where we're strongest. Instead, we'll strike everywhere at once. They'll have to split their forces to respond, and split forces can be defeated. The operation was called 7 Stars. Within hours, human and allied ships attacked across a massive area of space. The Concordat tried to respond to each attack, but couldn't send enough ships to any single location. Within 3 days, humanity controlled all 7 systems. It was the largest human victory of the war, and it happened because Soman understood something important. Sometimes the best strategy is the one that makes no sense. Deep inside Concordat territory, a special operations team led by infiltrator Daehyun prepared for the most dangerous mission of the war. Their target was an orbital defense platform around a core Concordat world. The planet below had never been attacked in 12,000 years. It was supposed to be invincible. Daehyun and his team of 12 soldiers floated in the darkness of space, wearing stealth suits that made them nearly invisible. They had spent 6 weeks reaching this location, traveling on a captured Concordat cargo ship and hiding among its supplies. Remember, we have 14 minutes once we're inside, Daehyun whispered over the team channel. After that, their security systems will detect us. They cut through the outer hull and moved through the station like ghosts. Guard after guard passed by without seeing them. The Concordat had grown so used to being untouchable that their security was lazy. Daehyun reached the main power core and placed explosives at exactly the right points. His training had been thorough. When the charges detonated, they would disable the entire platform for hours. Long enough for an attack fleet to get through. Charges set. Everyone out, Daehyun ordered. They escaped with 40 seconds to spare. The platform's defenses went offline exactly as planned, and a human strike force jumped into the system. For the first time in thousands of years, a Concordat core world was vulnerable. The humans didn't attack civilians. They destroyed only military targets and then withdrew. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe anymore. Scientist Yunji had been working on communication technology since before the war began. The Concordat could intercept most human transmissions, which made coordinating with allied species almost impossible. Yunji needed something that couldn't be intercepted or decoded. The answer came from quantum physics. She developed a communication system that used entangled particles, Messages sent through this system arrived instantly and couldn't be detected by anyone except the intended recipient. "It's like magic," one of her assistants said, watching the first test. "It's better than magic," Yunji replied. "It's science." With the quantum network in place, humanity could coordinate with 43 different rebel groups simultaneously. Plans that once took weeks to organize now happened in hours. The Concordat found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know what they would do before they did it. Captain Bora commanded humanity's first true dreadnought, the Unbroken Dawn. It was massive, powerful, and equipped with every advanced weapon Minho and his team could design. When the Concordats saw it for the first time at the Battle of Crimson Nebula, they sent their own flagship to destroy it. The Concordat flagship was 3 times larger and had been in service for 4,000 years. It had never been defeated. Its captain was confident this battle would be quick. He was wrong. Bora used the Unbroken Dawn's adaptive hull to constantly change her ship's configuration. When the enemy expected a frontal assault, she split the ship into 3 sections that attacked from different angles. When they adapted to that, she recombined and rammed straight through their shields. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Concordat flagship was drifting and powerless, and the Unbroken Dawn was still fighting. The defeat of their greatest warship sent shockwaves through the Concordat. If that ship could fall, anything could fall. The war was turning, but not everyone in the Concordat accepted what was happening. General Thros had served the Empire for 500 years. He was a warrior from the Kralgon species, bred for battle and honor. When he watched footage of human soldiers fighting, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: respect. "These humans understand war," he told his fellow generals. "They fight with courage and cunning. We have grown soft, winning through superior numbers alone. We should negotiate with them, learn from them." His words were considered heresy. High Archon Velmara ordered his execution as an example to others who might doubt the Concordat's superiority. Thros's death did not have the effect Velmara intended. The Kralgan military caste split in 2. Half remained loyal to the Concordat, following orders as they had always done. The other half, inspired by Thros's final words, joined the rebellion. They believed that true warriors respected worthy enemies, and humanity had proven their worth. The defection of so many Kralgan soldiers was devastating to the Concordat military. Kralgons were some of their best fighters, and now half of them were fighting for the other side. Ambassador Hana spent most of her time now coordinating with alien species rather than dealing with the Concordat. She had formed something called the Alliance of Free Peoples, a coalition of humanity and 23 liberated species. Every species had an equal vote in decisions. It was messy and slow and nothing like the Concordat's efficient dictatorship. It was also everything the galaxy needed. "Why should we trust that humans won't become the next Concordat?" asked a representative from the Vrelian species during one meeting. "You're winning this war. What stops you from becoming the new oppressors?" Hana had thought about this question a lot. "Nothing stops us except ourselves," she said honestly. "That's why we're building this alliance with equal votes. We're making it impossible for any one species to dominate. We're choosing to limit our own power because we've learned from human history that power without limits always becomes tyranny. We'd rather be remembered as liberators than rulers." The Vrelian representative thought about this and then nodded. "Then we will stand with you." But even as the alliance grew stronger, the Concordat prepared their final weapon. High Archon Velmara had ordered the reactivation of an ancient stellar weapon, something so terrible it had been banned even during the Concordat's most desperate wars centuries ago. The weapon could make stars explode. The Concordat used it twice as a demonstration of their power. 2 rebel worlds were destroyed instantly, along with everyone living there. Billions died in seconds. The attacks were meant to terrify the galaxy into submission. Instead, they did the opposite. Species that had been neutral suddenly joined the rebellion. The Concordat's cruelty was exposed for everyone to see. They claimed to bring order and civilization. But they were willing to destroy entire worlds to maintain their power. The galaxy had to choose: accept this kind of rule forever, or fight for something better. More and more chose to fight. Engineer Minho worked day and night after the star weapon was revealed. If the Concordat could destroy stars, they could destroy Earth whenever they wanted. Humanity needed a defense. He founded in shield technology that created a protective field around an entire planet. The shields couldn't stop a star from exploding, but they could protect a world from the explosion for long enough to evacuate. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Minho's planetary shields were installed on Earth, Mars, and every major human colony within a month. Then he shared the design with every allied species. The Concordate's ultimate weapon was no longer ultimate. Pilot Suji, now famous across the galaxy, led a raid on a Concordate war council. Intelligence said they were meeting on a space station to plan their next moves. Suji's squadron attacked during the meeting and managed to capture one of the council members alive. The prisoner was brought before cameras and asked to explain the Concordate's actions. At first, they refused to speak, but after hours of questioning, they finally broke down and confessed everything: the genetic control, the suppression of innovation, the planned genocide of species that wouldn't submit. The confession was broadcast across every frequency humanity could access. There was no hiding from the truth anymore. The Concordate had committed crimes against entire civilizations for thousands of years. The war had been about survival. Now it became about justice. Admiral Soman looked at her tactical displays and saw that the Concordate now controlled only 30% of their former territory. 70% had either declared independence or been liberated by the Alliance. Stand with humans, be remembered and honored beyond empires. 20 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy was almost unrecognizable now. Admiral Doyen stood on the bridge of his new ship, looking out at the frontier of explored space. He was in his 60s now, his hair gray and his body slower than it used to be, but his eyes were still sharp and his mind was still quick. He commanded the Frontier Defense Fleet, a force made up of ships from 30 different species, all working together to protect the borders of the new galactic Commonwealth. "Admiral, we're receiving a signal from the Commonwealth Council," his communications officer reported. "Ambassador Hana wants to speak with you." Doyen smiled. Hana had become Secretary General of the Galactic Commonwealth, leading the Democratic Federation that replaced the Concordate. They spoke often, coordinating military and diplomatic efforts. "Put her through," Doyen said. Hana appeared on his screen, looking tired but happy. She had dedicated her life to building something better than what came before. The Commonwealth had 89 member species now, all with equal votes. It was messy and slow and sometimes frustrating. It was also the fairest government the galaxy had ever seen. "Doyen, we have a situation," Hana said. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected something coming from dark space. Ships. Thousands of them. They're not from any known species." Doyen felt his stomach tighten. "An invasion force?" "We think so. They'll reach Commonwealth space in about 3 months. We're calling an emergency session of the Council. Every species needs to prepare." "I'll bring the fleet back to Earth immediately," Doyen said. Over the next few weeks, the galaxy prepared for war once again. But this time, everything was different. The Commonwealth had spent 20 years building trust and cooperation between species. They had shared technology freely. They had trained together, learned from each other, and built friendships across the stars. When the enemy arrived, they found a united galaxy waiting for them. General Taijin, who had once been a young lieutenant destroying a supply depot, now coordinated the Commonwealth's military response. He was 46 years old and one of the most respected strategic minds in the galaxy. "The invasion force is massive," he reported to the Council. "Maybe 50,000 ships. They're using technology we've never seen before, but they're also following predictable attack patterns. They expect us to panic and fight each other for survival." "Then we don't panic," said a Kralgon counselor. "We fight together like we've been training to do." Every Commonwealth species contributed forces without hesitation. Humans, Tashari, Kralgons, Vrelians, and 75 other species sent their best ships and soldiers. The fleet that assembled was twice the size of the one that had attacked the Fortress of Eternity. The first battles were brutal. The invaders were strong, organized, and ruthless. They destroyed several Commonwealth outposts and killed thousands of soldiers, but they made one critical mistake. They assumed the Commonwealth would fight like the old Concordate, with each species trying to protect only their own territory. Instead, they faced an integrated defense where humans defended Tashari worlds and Kralgons died protecting human colonies. The invaders couldn't understand it. Why would one species sacrifice for another? Sergeant Jiho, now a training officer, led a new generation of soldiers into battle. His students came from 20 different species and he taught them all the same lessons. Trust your team, fight smart, and never give up. They put those lessons into practice, defending Commonwealth worlds with the same courage their teachers had shown 20 years ago. Medic Hyejin set up field hospitals on the front lines. She was in her 40s now, with decades of experience treating injuries from dozens of different species. She saved lives without asking what species they were or what side they'd been on. Everyone deserved medical care. Everyone deserved compassion. She even treated captured enemy soldiers, which confused them greatly. They had expected the Commonwealth to be like other empires they'd conquered, brutal, vengeful, and cruel. "Why do you heal us?" one captured invader asked her. "We would have killed you." "Because healing is what I do," Hyejin said simply. "And maybe if you see that we're not monsters, you'll choose to stop being one too." The battle turned when 40 species that had once been part of the Concordat arrived with their fleets. They had maintained neutrality for 20 years, rebuilding their civilizations and staying out of galactic politics. But when they saw the Commonwealth facing an existential threat, they made a choice. A Theranid commander, whose predecessor had once served under High Archon Velmara, explained their decision. 20 years ago, humans taught us that freedom is worth fighting for. They showed us that protecting others isn't weakness, it's strength. We remained neutral because we needed time to heal. But now we see our neighbors under attack and we remember what humans taught us. If you stand for nothing, you'll be forgotten. We choose to stand with the Commonwealth. We choose to be remembered as allies of freedom. The arrival of the former Concordat species tipped the balance. Suddenly, the invaders faced a force of over 90,000 ships all working together with perfect coordination. They had never encountered anything like it. The final battle lasted 4 days. It was fought in the empty space between star systems far from any inhabited worlds. Both sides took heavy casualties. Doyen's flagship was nearly destroyed 3 times, but Minho's advanced repair systems kept it flying. When the invaders finally retreated, limping back to dark space, the Commonwealth had won. But the cost was high. Tens of thousands of soldiers had died. Hundreds of ships were lost. And yet, as Doyen looked at the casualty reports showing names from 90 different species, he felt something strange. Hope. They had won because they fought together. Because they trusted each other. Because they had built something worth defending. On Earth, a massive memorial was being constructed. It would honor everyone who had died in both wars. The war against the Concordat and the war against the invaders. The memorial was a wall covered with names, billions of them, from hundreds of species. Anyone could come and find the names of those they'd lost. Pilot Suji, now a flight instructor training pilots from across the galaxy, brought her students to the memorial on Earth. "See all these names," she said to the young pilots from 24 different species. Every one of them made a choice. They could have hidden. They could have run. They could have knelt. Instead, they stood. They fought for something bigger than themselves. That's what we honor here. That's what the Commonwealth is built on. The memory of everyone who chose courage over fear. A young human student asked, "What makes humans so special? Why did the galaxy change when we entered space?" Suji thought about it for a long time before answering. "Humans aren't special because we're stronger or smarter than other species. We're special because we refused to accept that the galaxy had to be the way it was. We asked why not. When everyone else said, that's just how things are. And when other species saw us standing up, it gave them permission to stand too. We didn't save the galaxy. We just reminded it how to save itself." Engineer Minho, now elderly and mostly retired, spent his days teaching at the Institute of Cooperative Technology. His students came from every corner of the Commonwealth, all eager to learn how to innovate and create. The Concordat had spent thousands of years suppressing innovation. Now, the galaxy was exploding with new ideas and technologies developed through cooperation between species. "My teacher once told me that some things are more important than survival," Minho said to his class. She was right. Freedom is more important. Truth is more important. Hope is more important. If we only cared about surviving, we'd still be kneeling to the Concordat. We chose to live instead of just survive, and that choice changed everything. Commander Jiwan had retired from active military service and now wrote history books. Her most famous work was called The War for the Soul of the Galaxy, and it had been translated into 300 languages. In it, she documented every major battle, every sacrifice, and every lesson learned from the wars. She ended the book with a simple statement. The Concordat ruled for 12,000 years, and will be remembered only as a cautionary tale. Humanity fought for 3 years and will be remembered forever. The difference? One ruled through fear, the other inspired through hope. History always remembers the hopeful. 30 years after the Second War, Hannah stood before the Commonwealth Council one last time. She was retiring from politics, ready to spend her final years in peace. But she had one last speech to give. When I was young, I thought diplomacy was about compromise and careful words, she said. I learned something better. Diplomacy is about building relationships based on respect and trust. The Commonwealth works because we chose to respect each other as equals. We chose to trust each other with our security. We chose to build together instead of conquering each other. And that choice, made every day by billions of beings, is what makes us strong. She paused and looked at the representatives from 90 different species sitting in the council chamber. Humans didn't create the Commonwealth. We all did. Every species here contributed something essential. Humans brought the spark of defiance. Tashari brought wisdom and patience. Krellguns brought honor and strength. Stand with humans. Be remembered and honored. Beyond empires, the fleet that assembled for the final assault was the largest in galactic history. 5,000 ships from 60 different species gathered in empty space, preparing to attack the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. They all knew many of them would not return. Admiral Soman stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked at the tactical display showing every ship in the fleet. Human vessels, Tashari cruisers, Kralgan battleships, Vrelian merchant carriers converted into warships, and dozens of other designs from species she'd never heard of 6 months ago. They were all here because they chose to be, because they believed freedom was worth fighting for. All ships report ready, Admiral, Commander Jiwan said quietly. Soman took a deep breath. Open a channel to the entire fleet. Thousands of captains and crews waited to hear her words. We're about to attack the Fortress of Eternity, a place that has never fallen in 12,000 years. High Archon Velmara has retreated there with a weapon that can destroy stars. If we fail, Earth dies, Mars dies. Every world we love dies. But I want you to understand something. We're not just fighting for our homes. We're fighting for every species that's been oppressed, controlled, or destroyed by the Concordat. We're fighting so that our children can live in a galaxy where freedom isn't a crime. Many of us won't survive this battle, but we will be remembered. Every species in this fleet will be honored beyond any empire. Now let's go finish this war. The fleet jumped into the fortress system together. The defenses waiting for them were terrifying. Thousands of automated weapons platforms, minefields that stretched for millions of kilometers, and the last of the Concordat's loyal fleet. The battle began the moment they arrived. Nari sat in a small chamber on Soman's flagship, her eyes closed and her mind reaching out across the battlefield. She was unique among humans, born with the ability to sense emotions and intentions at a distance. The military called her an empath. She called it a curse that turned out to be useful. The Concordat commanders are panicking, she reported through her headset. They didn't expect so many ships. They're pulling forces from the southern defensive line to reinforce the north. Tell Soman. Her information reached the admiral in seconds. Soman immediately sent a strike force through the weakened southern line. It worked. The fortress defenses weren't designed to deal with commanders who could sense enemy emotions. Marine Sergeant Jiho led the first ground assault team to reach the fortress itself. His soldiers fought through corridors that hadn't seen combat in thousands of years. Concordat defenders were everywhere, but Jiho's team had been trained by veterans from a dozen different species. They used tactics from human, Kralgan, and Tashari military traditions combined. Hold this position, Jiho ordered as they secured a landing zone. More teams need a way in. His squad held that position for 3 hours against constant attacks. 12 soldiers against hundreds of defenders. They used every trick they knew, from basic cover tactics to psychological warfare. Jiho himself was wounded twice but refused to retreat. When reinforcements finally arrived, the landing zone was still secure. Jiho's squad had lost 4 soldiers, but they'd made it possible for 2,000 more troops to land safely. Captain Bora brought the Unbroken Dawn directly at the fortress's main shield. The shield was supposed to be impenetrable, strong enough to withstand the blast from a supernova. Full power to forward shields, Bora ordered. All weapons concentrate fire on a single point. Her crew thought she was crazy. They were going to ram the shield? That was suicide. But Bora had studied the fortress defenses for weeks. She knew something that Concord had forgotten. Concentrated force could break anything if applied at exactly the right spot. The shield wasn't one continuous barrier. It was thousands of smaller shields working together. If she could overload just one section, the whole thing would collapse temporarily. The Unbroken Dawn fired every weapon it had at a single point on the shield, while flying directly at it. The shield glowed white-hot, flickered, and failed for exactly 4 seconds. It was enough. Bora's ship punched through and 100 other vessels followed before the shield reactivated. They were inside the fortress perimeter. Engineer Young-ho was on one of those ships. He was Minho's student, just 24 years old, brilliant and eager to prove himself. His team's mission was to locate the stellar weapon and disable it. They found it in the heart of the fortress, a massive device that looked like it was built from starlight itself. Young-ho scanned it with every instrument he had and then felt his heart sink. "The weapon is fully charged," he reported. "If we try to disable it normally, they'll just fire it immediately. Someone needs to manually override the power core from inside." "How long would that take?" Captain Doyen asked. He was commanding the assault ship carrying Young-ho's team. 14 minutes. But the radiation inside the core would be lethal within 2 minutes. Whoever goes in won't come out. There was a long silence on the communication channel. "I'll do it," Young-ho said quietly. "It's my idea. I should be the one." "Young-ho, no." Minho's voice came over the channel from far away. "You're too young. Let someone else. There isn't time to argue, teacher. And you taught me that some things are more important than survival. Earth's survival is more important than mine." Young-ho didn't wait for permission. He put on a radiation suit that would buy him a few extra minutes and walked into the core chamber. The pain started after 90 seconds. By 3 minutes, he could barely see. By 5 minutes, he was working purely from memory, his body failing but his mind still sharp. He kept working, kept forcing his hands to move even when they didn't want to anymore. At 11 minutes, he finished. The weapon's power core was locked in a safe mode that would take hours to reverse. Earth was safe. Young-ho managed to trigger his communication device one last time. "It's done. Tell everyone. Tell them it was worth it. Tell them Earth stands." He closed his eyes and never opened them again. Captain Doyen led the strike team that reached the weapons control center. High Archon Velmara was there, surrounded by their last guards. The fighting was brief and brutal. When the guards were defeated, Velmara stood alone, staring at the humans with something like confusion in their ancient eyes. "How?" Velmara asked. "How did primitives defeat an empire that ruled for 12,000 years?" Doyen thought about Young-ho's sacrifice, about the defenders of Haven, about every person who had chosen to stand rather than kneel. "You ruled through fear and control. We fought for freedom and hope. You forgot that people would rather die free than live as slaves. That was your mistake. We brought order to chaos," Velmara said. "Stability to turmoil. You've destroyed something beautiful." "No," Doyen replied. "We destroyed something terrible. And we're going to build something better." Velmara tried to activate a backup weapon system, but Nari sensed their intention and warned Doyen. The Archon was captured before they could complete the command. Across the fortress, Concordate forces began surrendering. Without their leader and their ultimate weapon, they had nothing left to fight for. The war ended 3 years after it began. 2 billion humans had died. Uncountable billions of other species had lost their lives fighting for freedom. Entire worlds had been destroyed. The cost was almost unbearable, but the galaxy was free. Memorial services were held on every allied world. On Earth, in the rebuilt city of Seoul, a ceremony honored all who had given their lives. Young-ho's name was read aloud along with millions of others, each one remembered, each one honored. Ambassador Hana spoke at the ceremony. She was older now, worn down by years of war and negotiation, but her voice was still strong. "We remember," she said to the crowd of humans and aliens who had gathered. "That's humanity's promise to the galaxy. We remember every sacrifice, every act of courage, every being who chose freedom over chains. Young-ho died to save Earth, but his sacrifice saved more than one world. It saved the idea that people should be free to choose their own destiny. We remember him, we honor him, and we promise that his death meant something." She looked up at the stars visible in the sky. "To everyone across the galaxy who stood with us, You will be remembered and honored beyond empires. Your names will be taught to children for thousands of years. You chose the hard path, the brave path, and the galaxy is better for it. 78 species had fought alongside humanity. Every one of them received the same honors, the same recognition. Because humanity meant what they said, everyone who stood for freedom deserved to be remembered. In a cell on a secure station, High Archon Velmara sat alone and thought about how everything had gone wrong. The Concordat was finished. Most of their former territory had formed new governments. The galaxy was free, chaotic, and unpredictable, and despite everything, Velmara had to admit a terrible truth. It was better this way. The Concordat had created order through oppression, stability through fear, peace through control. They had stopped the galaxy from growing, changing, or evolving. In trying to prevent chaos, they had created stagnation. Humanity had brought chaos back. And with chaos came possibility, innovation, and hope. Velmara didn't understand humans. But for the first time in their long life, they wondered if maybe understanding wasn't the point.